end and we'll kick off.
I am set on my end.
All right, then good evening, everybody, and welcome to the January 8th regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. As our first order of business, Madam Clerk, can I get you to call a roll, please?
Mayor Rilling,
Here.
Mr. Abrams,
Here.
Mr. Constant, Mr. Jelleret,
Here.
Mr. Kasimis,
Here.
Miss Yang,
Here.
Mr. Constant. 2, 3, 5, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, before we get into tonight's agenda, Mr. Mayor, any comments to start us off?
No, thank you, Mr. Abrams. I'm all set. I know we're working very hard on the budget. We'll get that taken care of. And I would like to thank Tom Ellis and Agnes and Chitsame. They're going to be working with us, and we're very confident that we're going to move forward and get this budget done in fine shape.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, then the first item on our agenda tonight is approval of the December 4th minutes. Can I get someone to move that for discussion and approval, please?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Artie. Any comments, additions, changes to the minutes as presented in our package?
All set.
Seeing none, can I get a vote to approve the minutes as presented? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are approved. Let the record also show that Kendrick did join us at 6:33. Good evening, Kendrick. Welcome to the meeting. Next on our agenda, there are no special appropriations tonight, so we can go right to the transfer agenda that begins on slide 8 or page 8 of our package. So Tom, you want to kind of guide this conversation like you always do?
Sure. The first one is from contingency. This is for an assistant city clerk, and I believe we have Darlene Young, our common council president, on to talk about this one. The amount is $35,000, and that will go into salaries and wages in the assistant city clerk's office. All yours, Darlene.
Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. I think we can still say that. I think I heard you all.
You're on mute.
I said such good things. You all missed it. I said Happy New Year and all that good stuff. So we are looking for a transfer of funds to support the assistant city clerk position. And that position is directly a support for the Common Council. And we've had that for many years, that position within the city. And we'd like to have that position again for the Common Council members.
Thank you, Darlene. I'm sorry to interrupt. I forgot to ask for a motion to discuss and approve all of the transfers. Can I get somebody to move the transfers for discussion?
So move, Troy.
Thank you, Troy. Apologies, Darlene. All your
That's okay.
comments are still valid. Just, I missed that. Obviously, I'm still in holiday mode.
Okay, it's okay. I don't know what's the next step with that. And so we're looking for a $35,000 transfer of funds to support that position.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, this position is mandated by the charter. Is that right, Darlene? I thought I heard.
It is in the charter, correct? Yes, yes.
And
And
Tom,
that position provides direct support to the council. I'm sorry, Ms.
yep, and Darlene and Tom, forgive again my failing memory, but was this not in the original FY 24 budget? Is that why we're taking it out of contingency? Was this one of those items where we said let's hire for the position and then we'll approve the budget? Can you just remind me why it wasn't in the plan?
I can talk to that, Darlene.
Great.
Excuse me. So last year we had an assistant city clerk, and the individual departed after several months. And that happened to coincide with the onset of the budget season. And given how difficult and challenging things were, we were able to cover some of, but not all of, the duties of this position with some other folks in the city clerk's office and the mayor's office. But it's gotten to the point where the common council needs a full-time person. It can't be patchwork anymore. So we had left this unfunded. The position was still open, but with no salary. So that assisted us a bit in the 24 budget process when we were going through all the difficult cuts.
Thank you.
Let's-
Additional
so-
questions, comments? Troy?
Ed, this is Troy. So Tom, was this a position you said, Darlene said that they've always had and the person just left? Is that the issue why it's coming up?
Yeah, so well, as long as I've been here, it's been in place, but the individual that left last year was difficult hiring time, and we were able to, save a few pennies by having everybody chip in and sort of contribute, but that's just not an option any longer. The best thing to have somebody full.
It's not a new position per se for the council.
No,
Okay.
we left we use what's called a PCN, a position control number, to manage all of our head counts. So we left that position control number valid, but we just put in a 0 for the budget for 24 to help us trim wherever we could. So now the position is still valid. It'll have no problem going through the hiring process. Everything is still open and valid. It'll be a series of approvals and we'll be on our way. So this is,
Thank you.
yeah, roughly.
Every 2 years, the majority portion of the common council appoints an assistant city clerk to work with the city clerk. Pretty much those duties are for providing assistance to the council members who might call in, need some information, et cetera, put together the budget, put together some of the agendas and so forth. So that position has been in place for as long as I can remember.
Right.
Thank you. Any additional questions on this line item? Okay, Tom, let's keep going.
Okay, next item is the fire department. For once, it's not an increase in the price of equipment. So this one happens to be to cover a transfer from firefighting department to fire prevention. And we have Ed McCabe on the line tonight to talk to this. This is money just transferred within the fire department across divisions. So not an ask from contingency. Ed, all yours.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, everyone. Yes, as Tom said, this is just money that is going to be transferred over from the firefighting division to the fire marshal's division. We have one individual who is a top step firefighter who has now been promoted to a deputy fire marshal, and this is to cover the increase in his salary.
Okay. Questions related to this? All right, then let's keep moving right along, Tom.
All right, next one is in the tax collector's department. Again, this is actually within Lisa's own division, the tax department. It's taking the money out of other professional services and moving it into IT software. This will be the annual fee for QDS. You probably heard that vendor mentioned on occasion over the past year or so. So no new money, no change, just spiking out the costs for the IT software to give it a little more transparency going forward. And this popped up during the 25 request process as we were going through it. And where possible, we are opening new accounts or creating new accounts to highlight these types of things individually. So not to be confused with Joyce's overall citywide software budget. In certain departments where the software is unique to them or it's not used citywide, we put in an IT software account within that division to highlight those charges.
I have a question.
Yep.
Hey, Tom, did you say that this is the annual fee for the software, 67,000?
Yeah. So the tax collector, the tax assessor also uses QDS as well. They've already got an IT software line, so we figured, hey, let's keep them separate. They each get a bill, proportionate bill to the services that they use from QDS.
Did we fund this last year?
It was yeah, we did. It was but we left it in other professional services instead of
Okay,
IT software line. So
got it.
Tom, is this the system, the software that we had that at least had a problem with last year?
Yes.
Was there any, was it the system, software's problem? Was it?
It was
can
a
we get a
combination.
rebate or something?
It was a combination of things, Troy. I think part of it is that we, as a city, do some unique things that other municipalities don't do. The big attractive feature for QDS was that they have some 80% of the municipalities in Connecticut use their software, but you know, we sort of have some quirks and some nuances that aren't necessarily ready to deal with. The other thing was that Munis was our prior system, and excuse me, we were the last municipality in Connecticut to use Munis, so we had to get off it at some point. They weren't going to support it any longer. So, but yes, you're right. The challenges were very, very painful last year around this time, but have gotten much better. There are still some issues out there, and Lisa's working through those as well as Paul.
Well, my only question is if it was QDS's software problem, I was just wondering if we can go back to the vendor and say, listen, this really was not a smooth rollout, and they might be able to rebate us some of this fee. That's all I'm wondering if that question has been
No,
asked.
those conversations have been going on for the better part of a year, including some pretty heated discussions from Henry and Lisa. They were both very vocal and animated in their frustration, and I think they have bent over back. Well, from what I hear, they've bent over backwards and given us a few items for less than they would normally charge. But I think she's not on right now, but she will be to talk about the tax collector report. Perhaps she can address some of those. Oh, Lisa is here. So
Is
I'm trying to summarize the challenges with QDS, and Troy's question was, if it was so difficult and painful, what are our options in terms of getting a rebate going forward?
A rebate from QDS for our fees.
Yeah.
What I've done to date, they bill us, they sent us a bill. By us, I mean my division, a bill in July, and it was then divided into quarterly payments. And I paid the first two payments just very recently. I was holding out and I paid it, but I sent them a letter that basically said, I paid the first two payments to get us caught up, but I'm not planning on paying the next two payments until we get an operator's manual, because there is no manual for operating the system. And we, 8 of us in our division, were at an extreme disadvantage because none of us had ever worked on this system before. And we were thrust into having to learn it on our own. We did have training, but we can't be in training all the time. And I haven't gotten an answer to that email, which I sent before Christmas, but I've paid them half of what they billed us, and we left it. And I think there'll probably be discussions going forward, but we're really hampered by the fact that there is no manual. So whenever something doesn't work the way we want it to work, or we don't know what to do, we have to call them. And that's really no way to run a tax collector's office, in my opinion.
So you're continuing to work on some I can't think of the right word, but some level of recourse for the city based on all the trouble. Okay.
My contention is that it's really a breach of contract, because the contract calls for an operator's manual, and I pointed that out to them.
Okay. Well, we can leave that in your hands. Any other questions, Troy?
No, I just appreciate that. But I mean, listen, what that put us through last year was not great for the city, and they should know that. And obviously, it sounds like you're doing the right thing with the leverage, because the minute you pay these fees, your leverage is gone. So thank you.
That's just my division. The other divisions have paid them, but they might not be having the same issues that we're having. but, you know, the thing that I would point out though is that the system works. Everybody's tax bills are valid. Payment processing is in accordance with proper accounting and so forth, and not behind in our work or anything like that. There have been some changes. Some of them have been for the better. Some of them have not been for the better. But there's positives and negatives. And I think I heard you asking about going back to the other system. And it was the feeling that we weren't going to be able to do that because, as Tom had mentioned, we were the only customer in Connecticut still on that system. There are other systems out there. There is another one that has some competition among Connecticut tax collectors, but at this point, we have a 5-year contract with QDS, and I don't think anybody is willing to do another conversion. So that's where we're at.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions on this line item? All right, Tom, should we move to building management?
Yeah, this is also another request from contingency totaling $7,000. So once a year, we come out with what's called a living wage document, which is sort of it's something that Chitsame puts together, basically indicates what the living wage should be. And it went up last year. And the reason that impacts us is because we use, or the building management uses Orion security systems. So they modified their contract to reflect the new living wage, the calculation that we did, and that's coming out to $7,500.
Okay, and that's through the end of the fiscal year, yeah?
Correct. And then our 2025 request will already reflect the new wage.
Questions related to this line item? Okay, then Health Department?
And then the final one for the evening is from Deanna and Bill Mooney in the Health Department. We've all seen on the headlines the fires that have happened recently, and it's the city's responsibility / obligation to assist those folks that are displaced. So our funds required to pay for this relocations and basically put people up during the emergency time. We need some more money, so 50,000 from contingency. And Deanna, Bill?
Tom, you did such a great job giving that overview.
What
I
didn't steal your
appreciate that.
thunder?
No, so just to add to what you're saying, just we're very appreciative of the support that the mayor and the BET have given us in the past when we've had unpredictable events occurring that require us to go over the budget. We had those discussions during the last budget discussion, how it's hard to predict and to budget appropriately. And you advised us to come back, if we needed additional funding. So this is where we're asking for the additional funding to cover costs that we've already incurred, costs that are pending, and any funding for the remainder of the year. So thank you for your consideration.
All right. Questions related to this line item?
Yeah, and I have a question, a follow-up question. I know this has come up in the past, and it's a great thing that the city does for people that have these unfortunate problems with fires and stuff. But the question is, I know we said in the past we would try to collect from the people's insurance, or the tenants or the landlord's insurance. Is that process still in place? Is that something we look to do to try to get some of these funds back?
So
Yes, hi, this is Bill. I'm sorry, Deanna. I'll talk if it's okay. Yeah, I try and lien properties if I can, but I can only do it in the case where the landlord was under violation or it's something on their fault. If it was something outside of their control, I can't do it. So that's the only thing we did in the last year and a half. We've probably gotten over $50,000 that we have been able to get back. But what I'll do is sometimes we'll get it back. Otherwise, I'll put a lien on the property, and we can recoup it at some later point when maybe they want to sell the property.
And just to add to what Bill's saying, I did look at the accounts earlier, and we've collected 8,000 this year already, about 24,000 that I saw from last year. So
Oh, good. So there is a process that the collection.
Yes.
Good, thank you. Great program.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, if you've recouped 50, is that 50 out of how much? Is it 50 out of 100 or 50 out of 50?
Oh, no, I'd have to look back on it. No, it's not 50 out of 50. I would spread it less than 50%, I'm sure, overall.
And And this is for how many fires and how many people?
We've had about 20 people. We've had, let me see. We've had 5 fires, but we also have to relocate folks that if we find out through code enforcement, they're in a legal apartment and it's unsafe, we have to relocate them for that as well.
Will we have any relocation costs for when we buy some of the properties around the new, in the Hatch and Bailey property area?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The city is looking, and perhaps it's not for your group, but I think the city is looking to buy a number of properties, and I seem to recall in the press some discussion of us paying for relocation for 1 or 2 of the residents. So
Yeah, and I believe that was all part of the budget that we approved specifically for that acquisition. It included any relocation costs within that.
I seem to recall Alan Lowe mentioning that when he came to us.
okay.
Yeah, we've met with Alan to discuss that, and he's let us know that he's budgeted that in a separate area. But we are providing, you know, that
Right.
we will help support that. But
Yeah,
it
we've
won't
been
have to
working
come
with
out
some of
this
the
line
tenants as
item.
well, but yeah, mostly it's going through Alan Lowe and with terms of the money for relocation.
Any other questions regarding
yeah.
transfer? Yes, Artie.
Yeah, is this an accurate number that you need to cover the cost, or is this for a slush fund that you have?
So we are already over 6,000 in that line item specifically. We have 8,000 that we've been able to use in a different line item to cover some relocation costs that also can provide eviction services too. So that's already about, 14,000 already that we have to cover, plus the pending charges that are coming from this most recent fire that I can't tell you the exact number that we're going to need. And then anything else for the rest of the year. So we're doing our best job to figure out, what do we know we already have to cover? What do we have right now? And then potentially, if there's any other relocation throughout the remainder of the year. I don't know if that answers your question, but
It doesn't. It seems like you only need 14,000 and you're asking for 50.
we're in the whole 14,000, but we have other charges that we're going to have to pay, like for hotel bills and everything that we know of, like recent events.
Sure. No, yeah, I totally understand that. I'm just kind of trying to figure out where that number comes from. The 50,000.
Yeah, that's about as much as we've already spent half of this fiscal year from like from July 1 through, December.
So Deanna, is it your best estimate based on what you're in the hole for now, plus what you expect based on recent history, could be the total expense for the second half of the year? Is that how you came up with 50,000?
Yes, that is.
And if we were to say to you for right now, tell me a number you need to cover current costs and come back again, should you need additional money, what might this 50,000 drop to? Said another way, what do you absolutely need right now? And what could we maybe come back for later?
So do you think 30,000 is the absolute, like what we know of cost right now,
I would say that's
without
in
anything
the
else
neighborhood,
happening
yes.
for the remainder of the year?
Right.
And then if we
That
go
would
over
be
budget,
accurate.
then
I have another just a follow-up question. Tom, how much did we fund this line item last year for this year?
Um,
I mean, is it something we do every year? We fund every year?
yeah,
We put money in there?
yeah, hold on, let me check. 56,
I think the approved budget for this fiscal year was 45,000, I believe.
Okay.
45, Dan?
I think so, yeah.
All right,
So, so plus this 50 puts us at about 95,000 for the year?
sorry, we're at 45 now, so if we grant this 50, we'll be at 95 for the revised.
I mean, look, recognizing that if we do that and it's unspent, it'll come back at the end of the year into the general fund, so it will ultimately wash out. the other side of it says that before tonight, we've already spent about $700,000 of a $1.5 million contingency. So do we want to ask Deanna and Bill to take this down to the 30,000 they need and come back if they need more, so that we can fund other unforeseen instances or issues out of contingency should they arrive?
Yeah, Ed, just a comment. I agree with that line of thinking. I think we should just use whatever the number they need today, and they are more than welcome to come back down the road. I just don't want to use contingency for excess.
I
use.
agree.
So Deanna, Bill, listening to you guys, it sounds like the number that you really know you need is 30,000 right now.
Yes.
So Tom, do they need to submit another request, or can we amend the request down to
I think we can,
30,000?
I think we can amend it. I don't know, it's the first time this has happened, but I don't see why we can't amend it.
Do you need a motion and all that stuff? Or?
Well, we need to move all of the items, I believe, but in this particular case, while discussing all of transfer requests specific to the health department request, can I get someone to move to change the amount from 50,000 to 30,000 based on actual need?
So moved. I'll move that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So with the new amount of 30,000 reflected there, as well as all of the other transfers in the agenda, all in favor of approving, signify by saying aye. Or
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you might want to accept the vote on the 30,000. It was
Okay.
moved,
Yeah,
but not voted on.
all
I
right,
was
so
thinking
let's vote on, since we have a motion to reduce the health department to 30,000. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, abstentions. All right, the motion to amend the health department to 30,000 is approved. Now, we move the entire transfer item for discussion before. So I should get a vote on approving the transfer items, including the amended health department 30,000. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The transfers are approved. Okay. Next on our agenda is other business, specifically the contingency tracker and the Parks and Rec funding. So Tom, do you want to start with the contingency tracker?
Yeah, well, you
Slide
dovetailed
50.
nicely, Ed, finishing up Deanna's discussion with the contingency. So with that in mind, that comes to about $75,000 for the contingency amounts that you just approved. So our new balance will be about 625 for the balance of the year.
Okay. Any questions on this for Tom? Tom, last month we had talked about reaching out to the departments to see if they had any best guess at contingency requirements throughout the back half of the year. Have you gotten any feedback yet from the department heads on that?
I asked some of the larger departments when we were going through the operating budget meetings, and I guess the common response was, well, if I was a soothsayer, I would be on an interest rate trading desk, not
Yeah, fair point.
Yeah, not here. So but I did ask them, keep it in mind, if you think you might have something, please, send it along. But I can certainly follow up again with another nudge, if you will.
Yeah, and again, obviously you know how to do your job better than I do, but this is messaging is important here as a marketer. I can tell you that this is not a "you sure you don't want more money" conversation. This is really a trying to make sure that we are planning to the budgets that we set at the beginning of the year conversation.
Yeah, well, I should caveat my statement by saying that the registrar of voters has been corresponding with me, Stuart and Brian, consistently about the rule changes that are coming up on the early voting and the anticipated costs. They're letting me know what each election costs. They are going to be here within a month or two, I believe, looking for some contingency money, but they've been
Okay.
keeping me very well informed along the way.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Tom on the tracker? All right, should we move to the proposed Rec and Park Fund?
Yeah, so this is a kind of a unique item that we haven't seen before, at least I have not. This is a proposal to create a new revenue fund. And the reason we're here tonight is because this needs to go through Board of Estimate or BET, Finance and Claims, and then the full council. So it's key to remember, we're not voting on any money right now, we're voting on a process. And this is step one in the process to allow Robert to proceed to Finance and Claims and ultimately to the Common Council for full approval. So before Chitsune can go ahead and open a new fund in our general ledger, she needs authorization and guidance and approvals to do so. So Robert,
So
go ahead.
before we do that, Tom, just a point of order, since we're looking for approval, do I need to have this item moved for discussion and vote?
I would think so, yeah.
So can I get a motion to move the Rec and Park budget item for discussion and vote, please?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Artie.
Yeah, so Robert, you're looking for, all right, they understand what I'm trying to do, they approve, now I can go to the next step. So this is step one of three in terms of the procedural aspect of it. So, all right, and Robert is here, and I believe Ken Hughes is on the line as well. So Robert, take it away.
Yeah, can you hear me? Because I've
Yep.
been having trouble with my mic. So,
All good.
yeah, our department is requesting approval to work with the finance department to establish a Rec and Park Fund as a revenue fund, separate and apart from the general fund, but required to go through the budget approval process each year, audited by the comptroller quarterly or semi-annually. The purpose of the park fund is to have a perpetual fund that enables the department to be very opportunistic and in producing newly created and evolving programs to generate higher participation and increase revenues. Currently, we're kind of hamstringed by the annual general fund budget because when opportunities come up, we have to wait a whole fiscal year to get approval. So we are hamstring much that we have to plan all our events and everything in advance in order to have the funds and the resources to do it. We do have a separate account right now that's kind of a revolving account. It's in the 4,000 series, Play and Learn, and our camp revenues go through that, plus any kind of donations we get from concerts, sponsorships, and those kinds of things go into this fund. But the fund is not budgeted. This would help to budget the 4,000 account, basically converting those monies that are still in the 4,000 account to this revenue account, and it would give us more accountability because then we could budget all the projected expenses in our general operating budget. So it would clean up that, and the other thing is it would give us a clear tracking on our revenues. Currently, when we try and monitor our revenues, they're all over the place. They're coming in through parking, the parking accounts, and so we have a lot of issues with tracking our revenues. This would put all our revenues into a revenue account. That way, all our expenses would be in the general fund, and that way we would transfer whatever percentages are budgeted out of the revenue fund to cover our expenses. Currently, if you look at our revenues and all our expenses, our revenues right now, just out of the traditional budgeting process, not including the revolving account that we have now, is about 20%. We cover about 20% of our cost with our current process. If we add in the revenue account, the 4,000 account, we're averaging about 28% of our expenses. So we want to be clear, we need to have we're trying to do is put all our revenues in one account and all our expenses, so the things are expensed. Because right now, the 4,000 account is sort of a slush fund, and I'm uncomfortable with it, and I'd like to be able to budget those expenses so that it could go through. It goes through an approval process. It's accurately approved through the budget process, and that there's more accountability. So those are the things that it does for us, and so I just want to take questions.
Questions for Robert?
Yeah, Tom, you said this is, have you seen this in your, is this common? So that a department would handle the accounts this way? I'm not familiar with this
No,
process.
I've not seen it before, but Robert did this in Seattle with tremendous success, but it took quite some time if my memory's right. But perhaps you could share, some of the wins and advantages that you came across.
Right. It really clean. The first things it does is the 4,000 account right now is not budgeted. So usually you want your expenses to be budgeted. That cleans up this, because we would put all those expenses now, the camp expenses and everything, into the operating budget, which is approved through the budget process. You guys approve that. Currently, you don't approve what's in the 4,000 account, which I think is not, it's not a good accountability to me. So that would solve that problem. Most big cities have a park fund. It's a source of it's a revenue source, just like grants or the REIT fund for real estate development. When you have a pie-shaped kind of source of funds, you're looking at all the funds, general fund, to where they come from, the taxes. You have these various segments of a pie. Well, this would be the revenue fund would still fund the expenses in the general fund, but it would be there also as a vehicle for opportunistic things that would crop up. For instance, pickleball cropped up real quick, and we weren't really prepared for the capital expenses or even the operating expenses, or bringing on instructors for pickleball, because we had to wait now for the fiscal year, so we can get more, we can actually budget it. This would allow us to do that, to take some opportunistic kinds of entrepreneurial things that will crop up. We would still have to get them approved through the Rec and Parks process in the Common Council, but the money would be there. And so it one, like I stated before, one, it cleans up the unbudgeted expenses in the 4,000 account. Two, it gives us easily more. The revenues will be more easily tracked because they'll go into a revenue account, and then three, we would cover a higher percentage of our expenses by transfers from the revenue account to cover those expenses, which would be budgeted and agreed upon in the budget process. So it is a fund that it is what most park departments are doing now. That's how they generate a vehicle to do these opportunistic things to grow. Because as you know, and you might well know, a great portion of the budget is going for police, fire, infrastructure. It's going for other things. So the way we can grow our park fund to cover more expenses is through these opportunistic kinds of things. There's a new sport called Tri-Ball, which is coming up, and there's going to be a demand request for that. We're actually going to hold a special event in 25 to introduce that new sport. So these are things that parks departments are doing all over the country to grow, because we know we're not first in line for general fund money. So we have to look at other kinds of things. But like I said, it'll give you more accountability on the money we're spending, and it'll give us more, I guess, easier tracking mechanism, so we can know where our revenues are at any point in time. So that's what it does.
Anne, I believe you have a question.
I do. So number one, I'm all for greater accountability and transparency as to the financials. What isn't included in our package are the tables in attachment A. So I've read through this page three times, and I still don't quite understand the issues. And I guess my one concern is that the carryover, which would typically go into the general fund that we could then use to cover contingencies and other things, it sounds like that carryover, that $376,000 now becomes a Parks and Rec fund that you can use for your expenditures, which I think in today's environment, given all of the demands that we're going to have in terms of capital and police, fire, and Board of Education and all, and this shrinking contingency fund, I think we need that, and we can't just completely allocate it to Parks and Rec at this time. So I guess what I'm saying is all for cleaning up accounts, more transparency, would like to have a better understanding of this, and perhaps it might have been more easily understood if the attachment was there. But even with that, if the intent is to capture carryover, I think we need to be cautious of that.
And that was, sorry, Robert. That was my call not to include the attachment. Just it's a lot of numbers, and my view was we were voting on a process and the procedure, and basically, you know, asking for permission for the creation of the fund. I'm happy to send this out to everyone.
I think another thing, Miss Yang, is that carryover currently stays in the 4,000 account. It doesn't go in the general fund. I was just pointing that out as a means of saying, you know, we can start this fund. The mechanism to starting the fund would be to move that money from the 4,000 account into this revenue account. Currently, it does not go into the general fund. It stays in the revenue. It stays in the 4,000 account to help us help us in advance to prepare for the next summer camps, because summer camps we have to start preparing in March, and so we don't have enough time to take advantage of the new budget. So that money stays in the 4,000 account. It currently does not go to the general fund.
Okay, Tom, but is it? I guess it just says the average balance and carryover. So I guess I just don't understand how the monies get parsed. And if there's any leakage that could be helped to support our general budget. I can't tell from this presentation.
Robert and I think and Tom, you could tell me. This sounds like it's like almost like what the golf course is. It's a separate authority was set up. Money is the golf course charges fees, does everything. When they have to make decisions, they go out and make decisions with the funds. We kind of stay out of it. It sounds like, but they had to set up a whole authority, if I'm not mistaken, for the golf. But Ann makes a good point as far as the funds, excess funds would, in the golf course, excess funds stay there and they do what they want with those funds. They come to us and tell us their balance, but it sounds like that's what this sounds like. It's what you're proposing.
Actually, you don't. Actually, it's not a separate authority. You actually will have more control because right now, like I'm indicating, the 4,000 account is not accounted for. So what I'm proposing is to move the 4,000 account into the revenue fund, which is controlled by the general fund, to cover expenses in the operating fund that that goes through the budget process. So all this would be accounted for through the budget process. It would not be outside the budget process. It would be
So-
approved.
Robert, I think what
Mhm.
people are having, I shouldn't even generalize it. I think what I'm having a
Mhm.
hard time with is your explanation as you speak to this
Mhm.
makes a great deal of sense.
Mhm.
However, when I read the one page that we
Mhm.
have in our package,
Uh-huh.
there are too many holes in it
Mhm.
to make me comfortable. There's no statement in what's written here that, again, any expense that
Mhm.
Rexon Park would like to commit funding toward still goes through the normal approval process, right? That
Right.
Rexon Park can't on their own decide we're
Right.
going to invest in X, right?
Right.
So what I would suggest, and I don't know if this request is time bound,
Okay.
but what I would suggest is that we put a little bit more detail
Okay.
in the page that's here to
Okay.
help everyone understand what you're starting to articulate.
Okay.
Because I know personally I'm losing the thread, right?
Okay.
And that's what's making me a little bit uncomfortable is I hear what you're saying and I feel good
Mhm.
about what you're saying,
Mhm.
but then I read this one page
Mhm.
and I don't see any of that, and that makes me nervous.
Okay.
My suggestion would be is you could do the current accounting
Mhm.
and you could have a middle column of your adjustments and then what your pro forma accounts would look like and show movements of dollars, and then we can track that movement of dollar and understand the accountability behind that dollar. So that's that. It's almost like going back and looking at your budget and then what pro forma it would look like for this movement and change in accounts.
So again, is there anything time bound in this? I'm sorry, Artie, go ahead.
I just want to make a statement. I agree with Troy. It does sound a lot like the Oak Hills Authority. I guess my question would be, my statement is you would take this money, you would invest it. What if you start losing money? And where is the accountability there? Are we going to start bailing you out like Oak Hills with the loans? And I think Ed, you said it. There's a lot of loopholes, a lot of holes that we need to fill the gap. I think before I become comfortable with it. Did you hear?
Well,
Chairman, I would suggest that perhaps we table this item unless, as you said, there's some time sensitivity, which I don't think there is. I would make a motion to table this item until we can get the information put together so that it becomes a little bit more clear as to what the potential is. I think it's a good idea. I think it's something that we need to look at. I think it will fill in some of the gaps that Mr. Stowers is talking about. But it seems as if some of the members of the BET are not totally comfortable right now, and I would make a motion to table it.
Yeah, so before we act on that motion, Robert, is there any time sensitivity to this request that we need to know?
No, there's not any time sensitivity to it, but I want you to understand that it's a part of the general fund. It's just a sub account in the general fund. It's not a separate authority. It's just a sub account in the general fund. But I can put it. I can follow some of your suggestions and try and make it more plain.
And Robert, please add a real life example, like you just said. If pickleball or that other sport, just walk through a scenario would be what if you had the funds, what would it look like? That's what I would like to do.
Yeah.
So the mayor is.
I also want you to understand if there was an opportunistic thing that arose, we would still have to go through the Rec and Parks. They would still have to approve it. The money would have to be there to do it. So it's not us on our own at all. Yeah.
So Robert, again, it's not that we're not supportive as a board. We're asking for more information and more detail on your proposal.
Okay.
Then we can support it wholeheartedly. Until then, the mayor has moved that we table this for tonight until we get that detail. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Therefore, Robert, we're gonna table this for now and ask that you just come back with a more detailed proposal.
could you put together maybe a kind of 4 or 5 points that you'd want to see in the revision?
Sure.
Could
We
you-
as
could
a,
you guys
we as
do
a
that?
board can do
Yeah.
that, and
Okay,
I will offline with
okay,
board members kind of get an email together that gets those
Okay.
questions. We'll get
Okay.
them to Tom, who will again get them to you.
okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
All right, Tom, other business on our agenda tonight. I see we have Lisa again and we have Alan, so we're gonna start with Lisa. Sorry,
Yes.
Alan.
Hey,
You
is it
before
time, is
Abe.
it time to mix it up again, Alan?
It's up to you. If you want to let Alan go first, I can wait. It's up to
Perhaps we will use the new year to take turns. We will alternate each month. How about that?
All right, so Tom, you pick who goes first.
Yeah, so Lisa, you start, and then Alan can jump in.
Okey doke. You can hear me okay, I take it.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. We haven't yet closed our month of December, so I don't have an update for you, but the packet that you were given by Tom includes our November figures and the November narrative. So I can focus on that and give you a little bit of an update. We're in the thick of our collection period now. Our tax bills did go out on time, and so far the collection is going really well. We did get them out during December, which enabled us to, like we wanted to, spread that collection period out over more weeks than just a 4-week period, which is what would have happened if we mailed them out in January. We're also working on some enforcement measures, and those are addressed in the narrative. Our third-party collection agency that we started using last year, we are now able to report on a 12-month period with them, because they have been billing for us for 12 months. And during that time, we have netted $800,000 in receipts of past due motor vehicle taxes and interest charges for customers that we did not have a valid billing address for. So this is a third-party collection agency that does skip tracing and other means of trying to locate people who have moved out of state in most cases, or within Connecticut, but we were not able to find them. We collect all the money. They do not collect for us. They only bill for us. But that relationship has gone very well. And we anticipate continuing to use them in the future. The fees that they earn are paid by the taxpayer. So the city does not lose any money. It doesn't cost us anything other than our staff time in helping to administer the accounts. We're in the process of doing a wage garnishment. We do this once or twice a year for Board of Ed and city employees who happen to owe past due taxes to the city. That is going into effect later this month. We've been working on it for a couple of months. And we are also working on our 2024 tax sale. We started working on it in November. We sent out a set of preliminary letters to advise people who are scheduled to be included in the sale based on how much they owe or how far back they owe. And that first set of letters, as of the time I wrote this last report, which was mid-December, we had already collected $500,000 on those accounts. That amount is only going to go up. And once we prove out our month of December, I'll have an update on that. But that's where we are. The other news that I think is relevant is we did send a flyer with all of our real estate bills. This was at the request of the Finance and Claims Committee, where I also meet with them every month, like I meet with you. They had suggested that we do an initiative to try to inform taxpayers of the tax relief programs that are available for taxpayers who are elderly and or disabled. Those are income-based programs that are funded by the city. And we did a flyer with the new income guidelines for the tax bills that will be coming out in July of 2024. And the rationale here was, let's send it out in December, because the application period for those credits is February through May. So it didn't really make sense to send it out with the July bill because the application period would have been over. So we sent it out now with the new income guidelines, which we get from the state and some from the town. And that went out to every real estate taxpayer, whether they are, whether we don't know if they're elderly or disabled or not. We don't have that information. So we just sent it to everybody and asked if they did not qualify themselves, if they would try to help us spread the word in order to let people know that these programs exist if they are able, if they're eligible to partake of them. As always, I'm very glad to answer any questions that you may have about the collection, or if you have questions about the software or anything else, I'm here to answer your questions.
Question. Comment. First off, I did read that communication. I thought it was excellent and it was timely, because I knew that it existed, but I didn't know exactly how it worked. And philosophically, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think for us to support senior citizens continuing to try to stay in Norwalk is terrific, because they're not necessarily using a lot of the resources like the schools. With this tax revaluation process, which is very confusing, and there's going to be a lot of things going on with it, how does that affect your department? And will it, does it put any dampers on the things that you have to do?
It affects our department in terms of everything that we do in the tax collectors division spins off the assessor's office. So I can't do anything without getting data or records from the assessor. I can't bill, I can't collect, I can't do anything. So in as much as the reevaluation affects that division and potentially draws resources away from other things, or occupies staff time or things like that, it potentially delays us. So I tend to put pressure on the assessors folks to keep up with the things that I need so I can get my bills out on time and so forth. That's how it mostly affects us. In terms of property values, tax collectors are not involved with that. We do get a lot of questions from our taxpayers who don't necessarily distinguish between the assessor who discovers, lists, and values property and the tax collector who collects taxes based on those assessments. To them, in some cases, it's just the tax department. So when we get those questions, there's a pamphlet that the assessor's office put together about the revaluation. We hand that out and we basically refer them to the assessor's office and take whatever direction Paul Gorman gives us. I know that right now they're in the process of dealing with the company that actually performed the revaluation vision, and there's an appeal process and so forth, but our office, our division, the collector's office, is not involved with that at all.
Any other questions for Lisa? Thank you as always, Lisa. The only thing that concerns me is that you don't get buried under the avalanche of paper that's behind you.
Don't worry, it's all good.
All right.
Thank
Tom,
you.
so we move to Alan in Oak Hills?
Yep, it's he is up next. Go ahead, Alan.
So last and by hopefully not least, basically, Oak Hills now moves into obviously a quieter time for us here in November. But we still are doing okay on the revenue side for the month of November. We took in about $107,000 worth of total revenue. Mainly got golf, obviously, compared to a budget of $95,000. We managed to keep our expenses right on line, 127 budget, 127 actual. So we were actually about $7,000 ahead on a bottom line perspective for the month of November. So trend continues to do okay. Looking at year to date, we have 5 months in the bank so far, and our revenue is quite ahead, about $120,000, quite substantially. Our expenses are up a little compared to budget because we did more revenue, but on a year-to-date basis, we find ourselves $86,000 on an operating basis ahead of what our budget was after 5 months in the bank. Now, we probably won't get too many swings moving forward. December, January, February is obviously a pretty quiet time for us. Not too many people playing golf today, obviously. So we still got a pretty good head of steam so far on the P&L part of it. So that's pretty much our operating area. Any questions on the operating part of Oak Hills so far?
Nope.
Just to talk now on the on the restaurant side, I was asked by the chair to put together a restaurant committee. We've met 3 times. This Saturday we did meet as a committee, the 7 of us, 3 authority members, Robert Stowes, myself, and Richard Dellinger, and 4 volunteers from Oak Hills, head of the Men's Association, head of the Women's Association, Steve Shepard, and Andy Glazer. We did meet, and we did interview the 3 candidates that we currently have. We did work with the City of Norwalk purchasing area to come up with these candidates, to look at their paperwork, their P&Ls, etc., etc. It was an interesting exchange, some back and forth, looking at we have, I can't say who they are at this moment in time, but we have two concessionaires that currently run golf courses, one in Westchester, one in Connecticut, and we have a restaurateur that is currently in Stamford. So we have a good range of people out there, and we have there were some questions asked and some things talked about, and then we have another meeting this Wednesday of the committee where we will kind of come up with a path moving forward that we think is the way to go, and we will make that recommendation to the Oak Hills Park Authority, and hopefully on the 16th of January, 2 days prior to the 18th when it's supposed to be, because Chair can't make the 18th. So on the 16th of January, we hope to the committee will present its findings, and then hopefully we will look to take a vote at that meeting. So things are moving quite well ahead on that front, and by the end of January, middle of January, the current licensee, Dry Dock Smoking Aces, will be out of there on an amicable basis, having paid what he owes us, and we will be good. Obviously, we have to get liquor licenses, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's not a lot of capital going to be involved with new people coming in. They don't make a lot of changes to that restaurant because it looks pretty good, especially the front of the house. Not a lot of changes in the kitchens. They've all said how big it is. But anyway, that's our restaurant update. If anyone has any questions on that.
Great, Alan. Sounds like you're making great progress, and you've been very transparent. I appreciate that. We all appreciate that. And it sounds like by you'll be able to roll somebody in there by April, beginning of the season, right?
Yep.
April 1st.
Yeah. And I'd just like to make a comment that I think Jim Holliday, who is the general manager, has made a lot of our people on the authority's lives a lot easier. And I think he's communicating with the golfers. I don't know if you've got his emails. I have, and I think that is working out quite well. I think so. That's good.
I look forward to it. It sounds great.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Alan? Alan, thank you. Promise. I made a note to myself. You'll go first next time. And
Yeah,
Tom
probably won't be me.
mine.
Probably won't be me next time, but that's okay. No problem. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Any other business that anyone would like to raise? Tom?
2 quick things. Next month, we are not meeting on the first Monday, which would be February 5th. We are meeting on Monday, February 12th. And the reason for that is that's the week of the budget presentations for the operating budget. That's where we publish and present the recommended budget. So right now, where we are in the stage, I'm in the process of gathering up the last few items on the requested budgets, and then gonna go through it with the mayor and Tom Livingston and come up with some recommendations on where we can cut and come up with hopefully a reasonable number and move forward with that. The other item I wanted to point out, there was a new report in your packet, the very last one that's titled Budget to Actual on the agenda page. You may have heard me talk about this on occasion over the last few months, but we finally have a first pass at that available. So what this does, as opposed to the regular printouts that you get, those only compare your actuals to the total year budget. What this report at the end does is it has month by month budgets and then year to date and then the total year. So it gives you a clearer picture of whether or not there's an issue or how things are trending. So there's a lot more detail than what I gave you. I only gave you 6 pages. I figured I'd let you chew on that. Come back to me with any questions or comments. If you want to see all 2,600 line items that make up the operating budget, I'm happy to send that to you, but I think that's about another 40 or 50 pages. So to me, it's a bit more useful than the regular computer Munis printouts, but no reason to discontinue those by any stretch. It's just an additional piece of information to help you make an assessment better. So any comments or feedback are welcome, and we can continue to tweak that as we go forward.
Ed, quick question, I guess, for the mayor or for Tom. I don't know the timing. Just talk about the CFO process. I read in the paper there was a number of applicants. Maybe you could walk through the timing and that process real quick.
You're on mute, Mr. Mayor.
You're still muted, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
There. We're taking the applications as they come in, looking at them. We want to make sure that we vet them very carefully. Looking at, I think right now we probably have about 3. And we're looking at putting together a team to come in and vet them and then start interviewing some of the candidates. There's no time frame right now. We want to make sure that we give ourselves enough time to get the best quality candidate.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on that topic? Any other topics that we need to cover this evening? Seeing none.
Motion to adjourn?
There we go. Thank you, Artie. All in favor? Motion carries. Have a nice evening, everyone. Thank you very
Good night.
much for your time.
Happy New Year. Good evening.